Hey there, Kelda. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Welcome to our little live stream here. I just got it going, and so I've got a few pieces of housekeeping to take care of. So let me
Sure.
tuck you back in the waiting room, and we'll get rolling. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Let me do this for you, and let me put this up here. We got a twofer today, starting with Senator Kelda Royce, and let's get that puppy rolling right now. All right, what do you say we get this show on the road? It's a Thursday morning, another beautiful morning up north. I'm Pat Whitelow in Chippewa Falls on this Thursday, February 26, 2026, 2/26/26. Already, nice to have you here. If you're new to the live stream, it is not a full-blown radio show. It's not even quite a podcast, just a good place to talk live with people for stories that I'm working on for Up North News. And my guest is Senator Kelda Royce, candidate for governor. And then we will follow that by playing back the interview I did last night with Colorado Congressman Jason Crow, who was in Eau Claire last night. The congressman is a Wisconsin native, grew up in Beaver Dam, later attended the UW, then joined the military and eventually relocated to Colorado, where he's now a member of Congress. But he knows the importance of the 3rd Congressional District race, and that's what brought him to the Chippewa Valley yesterday. So we're going to talk to him about that in just a bit. But first, we are very happy to have here live joining us this morning State Senator Kelda Royce, talking about her campaign for governor and a bit about the legislature as it kind of sort of wraps up business as well. Senator Kelda Royce, good morning. How are you?
I'm delighted to be with you, Pat. Good morning.
Oh, it's so good to see you again. We have a lot of ground to cover here. We're going to start simply with the headline that was in the news most recently. A Marquette poll on who knows who in the race for governor, and I raise it mostly just to say what I've always said about polls this far away. You got 65% of people say they don't know who they're going to vote for yet. I'd be really surprised if they did know at this point, Kelda. So, I mean, we're still in the get to know you stage of the campaign, I imagine.
That's right. I mean, what was great about that poll for me was seeing that the candidates who everybody knows, Rodriguez and Barnes, had very little support. People know them, but they have not translated that into support. So this is a wide open race. And it means that the candidates that are going to have the money to be able to communicate are the ones who are going to be able to be competitive. And one thing about me, I'm very Midwestern frugal. So I am running this campaign to win. I'll be communicating with voters, not now when it's throwing money away, but in the summer when folks are paying attention.
Yeah. And as folks start paying attention, of course, I mean, look, even on the Republican side, you had a majority of people saying they don't really know enough about Tom Tiffany to support him or not, which is rather odd because he definitely has a track record where if you become the nominee, it's not like you're going to have to scrounge around for things to say about what Wisconsin would be like with Tom Tiffany as a governor.
Well, exactly. And I think as I talk to people all around the state, especially people in the North who know Tom Tiffany better than the rest of the state, they want to make sure we have a nominee who can actually win. And I think, if you look at the candidates, we have a lot of good folks running. But if you want a progressive who can actually win statewide and win a general election, that's me. I check a lot of those boxes. I've got rural roots from north of Highway 29, where I was a little girl, and I represent a big urban area now. I've got the most experience and a long bipartisan track record. So those things are going to be really attractive to the kinds of general election voters that we're going to need to win this race.
Yeah, you're talking about working bipartisan with folks, but being a progressive at the same time. And one of your more recent announcements was the way that you want to work with another lawmaker to basically give a raise to about 1 million people around the state. I was looking at the figures just before we went on here about, what constitutes a living wage in Wisconsin, compare it to the minimum wage. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot of people here who really deserve a raise, and you say you're ready to give it to them.
That's right. Our bill will raise the minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour, with a pathway over the next 5 years to get to $20 an hour. We're also giving a raise to tipped workers who currently make $2.33 an hour, and we'll bring them up to $7.50 an hour. And then it will be basically they'll make half of what the new minimum wage is. We also give small businesses a longer span, and we're maintaining opportunity wages for kids, for young people who are under 18, so that they'll still have job opportunities.
This is something. This wage has been stuck since 2009. It
Right.
feels like maybe the talking points about it just being a fast food job, are finally being overcome.
Mhm.
But because it's been so small for so long, I fear that sometimes bringing it to a living wage, $15 to $20 an hour, it's a number that I don't know if it scares people, but it sure makes for easy politics in it. And you're saying you're ready to more than defend that when you stop comparing it to 725, but compare it to what it takes to raise a family in this state.
That's right. I mean, a living wage, let's keep in mind, a living wage doesn't mean for a family. It means one person is able to support him or herself. Just the basics, no frills, no vacations, just housing, food, transportation, and utilities, the bare minimum, right? And there is no county in the state, not one of our 72 counties, where $20 an hour today is a living wage for a single person. So we are really catching up here. And when I hear that, oh, nobody makes, $15 an hour or 7.25 an hour, I just say, well, that's not true, because I talk to Wisconsinites all the time. There are a million Wisconsinites who are working for less than $20 an hour now. That's according to the Department of Workforce Development, right? That's not politics numbers. And they're going to get a raise under this bill. But if you talk to the people who are doing early childhood education, right, that are in our daycare centers, the people doing home health that are taking care of the elderly, folks who are working retail or service jobs, like in a grocery store, they are making less than $15 an hour, and they are the ones who really are in desperate need of a raise.
Senator Kelda Royce is with us and hoping to be elected governor and have a legislature next session that is a bit friendlier to workers and families. But this session is still hanging around in part because there are still these negotiations between Governor Evers and Republican leaders in the Assembly and Senate on a potential package that would increase, state aid for schools and also provide some form of tax relief, either income tax rebates or property tax relief, something
Mhm.
like that. I've already said I'm a bit skeptical that something could get worked out or not. And looking at last night's appearance with Congressman Jason Crow and talking to people there, there are folks actually concerned that a deal, if reached yet, may fall short of what we really need, and that maybe it's better to wait for the legislature next year to take care of this. What do you think is going to end up happening with these negotiations? Will we see something yet this year, or is it more likely that this will be a matter for the next budget cycle?
I think the Republicans are all talk on this. They don't care. They had the entire session. Democrats, we gave them many opportunities to repeal the 400-year veto, to fund our schools appropriately, and stave off the kinds of big property tax increases that all of us are seeing now in our property tax bills. At every turn, they refuse to do it because they would rather have the political weapon. They'd rather be able to blame the governor and say, look at your property taxes, than actually solve the problem and protect our pocketbooks. So I don't have any faith that the Republicans are genuine in their willingness to do this. If anything, I'd say this is kind of a smash and grab. They know that they're on their way out of power, and so they're going to try to spend all the surplus to make sure that we can't actually invest in kids and in schools in the next session. And I'm certain that the governor is going to reject that ploy.
How many times I have used the word heist to describe what it is Republicans want to do with the state
Yeah.
surplus that we have here.
Well, they
Some
take their messaging from the top, right? The grifter in chief.
Exactly. Now, some things did get done. Others are left hanging here. One of the things that was apparently accomplished was finally releasing the PFAS money to help with communities that need safe drinking water. But again, it was just like pulling teeth to get money that had already been approved in a budget. Did you feel good about that and other issues that finally made it across the finish line?
Well, yeah, of course. I'm somebody that works on a bipartisan basis all the time. And I think that's important in a state like Wisconsin. But of course, it's hard not to be frustrated to think of all of the people who, for years, haven't been able to drink the water that comes out of their faucet. I think about all the moms who died because they didn't have postpartum coverage. And, so I'm glad that we're making progress now. But, you know, real people are impacted when Republican politicians stand in the way of good legislation. And so I'm very mindful of the fact that for some, progress comes too late.
Yes, it does. And it seemed to take until Speaker Robin Vos was on the verge of announcing his retirement to get some kind of progress on this.
Years.
Yeah, so we'll take the incremental steps. Yeah, we'll take the incremental steps where they are, but it does lead to something that's also our Sunday newsletter question of the week, and that is what Wisconsin politics will be like without Robin Vos and without Governor Evers. Like it or not, the two were butting heads a lot. I think we know who's mostly responsible for that. But the question is, once Evers and Vos have left the stage, will things get better in the Capitol? Will things stay about the same? Or will things actually get worse, that the next leaders that come up are going to want to prove how tough they are? You've got an inside view from your time in the legislature and on Joint Finance Committee. Are you hopeful that next year the page will turn in relations between a governor and the legislature?
Well, I am, but it really depends on the governor, right? I think that when you look at the really transformational governors in our lifetimes, unfortunately, I got to say, it's Scott Walker and Tommy Thompson, both of whom were creatures of the legislature. And I don't mean, transformational in a good way, right? But they were able to get their agendas really through because they knew the legislature well. And I really believe that we have so much business that we need to take care of from 16 years of a Republican gerrymander. We talked about funding public education, but what about lowering healthcare costs? What about childcare? Funding our public schools, restoring collective bargaining rights, protecting reproductive rights, all of these things that Republicans have really taken us backwards. If we're going to accomplish that, we're not going to have years and years and years of Democratic gerrymander. We're going to have a narrow window of opportunity. So we need a governor who is capable of making that change, that has the courage and the conviction to actually maneuver in the legislature and is willing to wield power to do it. And that's something that I think sets me apart in this race for governor, my experience and my willingness to use political power. I think we'll have a Democratic Senate, which is going to be great. And then the Assembly is going to be very close one way or the other. And a lot of that depends on whether we have a strong nominee for governor or whether we have to spend a lot of our money to try to get somebody across the finish line who might be a weaker general election candidate. And then there isn't enough left over to win the Assembly.
Jim in Appleton, one of our regular viewers here, throws in the comment section, the minimum wage should be tied to inflation, in my opinion. Does your plan do anything to move the wage with the cost of living?
It sure does, Jim. Yep. So after we get to the $20 an hour, it will be indexed to inflation so that it continues to go up. And the other thing that we do is we let local governments have control of their minimum wages again, right? That's one thing the Republicans took away, because we know, listen, if Madison is the fastest growing community in the state, and if the cost of living there is going up twice as fast as the rest of the state, then we need Madison to be able to adjust to that.
We can't leave you without visiting the issue that you've been championing, and that would be women's health care rights and the efforts in the legislature this time to redefine abortion, potentially criminalize miscarriage and things like that. We don't hear about these issues quite as much recently because some of these extreme bills, of course, are no longer in front of us. But how much of a role should that be in the minds of voters as they look at who to choose in the gubernatorial primary amongst all of the candidates?
Listen, this unfortunately continues to be a threat. We have a federal government that is hell-bent on restricting access to abortion. Tom Tiffany voted for a national abortion ban. This is a guy who doesn't want anybody to have access to abortion. And then think about access to birth control and IVF. Those have also been attacked by Republicans at the state and federal level. So this is important. We can't rely on always having a Supreme Court to back us up. We need to know that we're going to have a governor who, when the rubber meets the road, is always going to stand with women and stand with doctors and make sure that people have the health care that they need.
And actually, there is a state Supreme Court election coming up in very short order here. And again, it's a nonpartisan election, but abortion rights, even though control of the court is not necessarily in the balance, I think it's pretty important that people know where the two candidates stand on women's health care rights in that race as well.
That's right. My friend Chris Taylor and I, when we were very young in our 20s and early 30s, we were fighting on the front lines for reproductive rights. I, as the executive director of NARAL Pro-Choice Wisconsin, and She was the policy director for Planned Parenthood, and we were kind of joined at the hip going around the Capitol. And, I was warning people that if Roe was ever overturned, we have this 1849 abortion ban. We helped pass the Compassionate Care for Rape Victims Act. And really, so she's somebody that I've known as a fellow attorney and a fighter for women's rights for many years, and I think she'll be an excellent Supreme Court justice.
And then finally, the state continues to be a battleground. Congressman Jason Crow from Colorado was in the 3rd District last night. Vice President J.D. Vance is going to be in Plover today. I find it interesting that for the first time in a long time, it's not a president who's traveling the country after the State of the Union, but J.D. Vance taking his, what does he do, the new czar of the war on fraud or whatever it is. What does that say to you that the vice president's coming to Wisconsin trying to carry water for that message in the State of the Union, whatever it was?
Well, I think it goes to how toxic Trump is. I mean, he spent 2 hours of our precious lives last night spewing his lies and hatred and propaganda, and it was totally ineffective. And he's lost the trust of the people on issues of the economy, of inflation, of jobs and trade, on war and peace. But he's also lost the country on immigration, right? We know that Donald Trump is making us less safe, less free, and poorer, even as he's lining his own pockets and those of his billionaire buddies with our money. So Trump does not have the power, and he does not have the trust of the people.
State Senator Kelda Royce. Kelda, anything we missed that you're talking about as you get around the state here that you want to make sure we cover today?
Well, the big thing is I launched my healthcare plan, Kelda Care, last week, which would allow anyone to buy into the same health insurance that I enjoy as a state employee. So this is going to lower costs and reduce uncompensated care. It's going to be a great option for small businesses or even medium-sized businesses that are tired of those private sector double-digit increases from their health insurers. And it's going to improve everybody's health in the state.
Kelda Royce, candidate for governor. The primary is in August, and we really appreciate you taking some time out to tell us about the campaign today. Kelda, safe travels. Good to talk to you.
Good to see you, Pat. Thanks.
All right. Take care. All right. We'll have my interview with Congressman Jason Crow from Colorado coming up, along with today's history lesson. All that and more on a Thursday morning. Thanks for being here for another beautiful morning up north. All right, I talked to Congressman Jason Crow last night at the Chippewa Valley Museum. He was at a fundraiser there. And let's give a little watch and listen to Congressman Crow talking about his Wisconsin roots and the importance of the 3rd Congressional District flipping away from incumbent Derek Van Orden.
Congressman from Colorado's 6th District. I was born in Madison, lived in Beaver Dam for a decade, went to UW-Madison, so I'm a Badger. This is my home state, born and bred. I now represent a district in Colorado where I've been for decades. This is actually the first time I've been back in Wisconsin since I was elected to Congress. So it's an interesting homecoming for me to be back in my home state.
Tell me about the motivation to be here in the 3rd Congressional District and why this is such an important race.
Yeah, so I'm a Democrat in the House. I'm the chair of the battleground for House Democrats, which means I'm working hard everywhere around the country where there are battleground districts and states to flip the House. And this is the front line. Wisconsin 3 is a must-win seat for Democrats to retake the House of Representatives in the fall. So we're coming here, we're organizing, we're mobilizing, we're bringing our message directly to folks.
How much is that message caught up in tariffs that people like Derek Van Orden are still defending despite what the public is clearly seeing is happening with tariffs and their prices?
Yeah, listen, people understand what's going on. I don't need to tell people what they're struggling with, right? They can't afford health care. They can't afford homes. Tariffs have devastated Wisconsin. The soybean farmers here have just been crushed, right? Talking to some of the soybean folks, a lot of them haven't had orders in 5 months. The orders are just starting to trickle in. Big corporations, the corporate elite in this country, the folks who are bellying up to Donald Trump, like they can afford to do this. They're sitting on stockpiles of cash in banks, but family-owned businesses, family farms, small businesses, they're just being devastated by this, and enough is enough.
You were at the State of the Union, and you and other veterans have been specifically targeted by this White House.
Yeah, I'm a combat veteran, 3-time combat veteran. I served in Iraq and Afghanistan as a paratrooper and an Army Ranger. And me and fellow veterans in Congress, we filmed a video last year that just said, hey, if you're in the service, you're in the military, you have to abide by your oath. You have to follow the law, which should come as no surprise to a military person, right? You learn this in boot camp, you learn this before deployment, like this is basic military stuff. President didn't like it. He accused us of treason. He threatened to have us hung. And 2 weeks ago, he actually tried to throw me and the others in prison, tried to indict us before a grand jury. They failed. They're always going to fail. I'm not going to back down from my duty and my obligation, and we're going to continue to just take our case on the road and get the job done.
What is your message specifically to veterans in the 3rd Congressional District? They hear Derek Van Orden talking about his service, but how is it that you want them to consider this race?
Listen, a lot of people like to thank veterans for service. When I got back from Iraq and Afghanistan, people liked to thank me for my service, and I appreciated that, and I always do, but I think it's really important when you're talking about elected officials and leaders. You don't listen to what they say. Look at their votes. Don't tell me what your values are. Show me your budget, and I'll tell you what your values are. And there is a sacred promise that we make to our veterans and to our military families that if you raise your right hand, you take that oath, you're willing to give your life for this country, that our nation will stand by you. And I just will not tolerate people that slash the VA budget. This president has fired more veterans than any other president in history. They are gutting the VA. They're cutting back on veterans' benefits. And here there was actually a veterans' home that was essential to this community. Derek Van Orden had the ability to apply for federal funds to keep that home open, and he refused to do it. So listen, talk is cheap, right? We got to bring money to our veterans. We got to fulfill our promise.
Congressman Crow, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Here we go, Jason Crow talking to him at the Chippewa Valley Museum last night as he was campaigning in the area. All right, let's get to today's history lesson real quick for this 26th day of February. The link that I want to drop into the chat here is for Michael Bolton. He's 73 years old today and ceaselessly mocked since he came on the scene in the late 80s and early 90s. So why not put up a nice cheesy video from that site? So I will grab one and throw it in the comment section here. There's some celestial birthdays today. Johnny Cash was born this day in 1932. Fats Domino was born this day in 1928. And the great one, as he called himself, Jackie Gleason, was born this day in 1916. On the music charts, the #1 song 60 years ago today, 1966, was Nancy Sinatra's "These Boots Were Made for Walking." In the history books, on this day in 1616, Galileo was formally banned by the Roman Catholic Church from teaching or defending his view that the earth orbits the sun. Glean from it what lessons you will. On this day in 1919, President Woodrow Wilson signed an act establishing the Grand Canyon National Park. 10 years later, in 1929, President Calvin Coolidge signed legislation establishing the Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. And there is a look at your history lesson for today. I've already mentioned our question of the week, of course. How will Wisconsin politics be once Tony Evers and Robin Voss exit the stage? To be the first to see our Sunday morning question of the week, sign up for that newsletter, upnorthnewswi.com. That's the website as well to go to for our Do Something calendar of events. And there are a lot of good events on there, a couple of social ones on the calendar for today that are worth looking at. Let's see, when Kelda Royce was here, I neglected to mention her website and Facebook page. Let me throw that up real quick. You can head over to facebook.com/Kelda Royce, and KeldaRoyce.com is where you'll learn more about her campaign. And I'm looking at MIT put together their calculations on living wage that I was talking about with Kelda just a bit ago. And for Wisconsin, according to MIT's calculations, when you look at everything, to keep a roof over your head, childcare, groceries, utilities, and all of that, if you are a single adult with no kids, just you, no kids, no spouse, what is a living wage in Wisconsin? $21.88 an hour. If you're making less than that, you're not able to afford the basic necessities and probably have some credit card debt that's getting worse. and the current minimum wage is nowhere near $21.88. If you are a single adult with one child, it's about $40 an hour. With two children, it's $54 an hour, and probably more given the childcare crisis here. For two adults, if one of them is working and you have two kids, we're still talking about a living wage of $40 an hour. And if you have two adults at home and both are working and you've got two kids, that living wage is $28.66. So when people say, wow, we can't afford a $15 to $20 an hour minimum wage, again, remember that there are more than 1 million Wisconsinites who are working for less than that living wage that a single person would need at about $21 an hour. And so that's why Kelda's made it a centerpiece of her campaign and is talking about increasing it. And of course, you'll hear that from other candidates as well. All right, off I go over to the day job at Up North News, take that Jason Crow interview and Kelda Royce interview and turn those into stories. No show tomorrow. Then next week, I will have Julian Emerson here on Monday to talk about affordable housing in the Chippewa Valley. And then his lovely bride, State Representative Jody Emerson, will be joining me on Tuesday as well. So thanks for joining me here for another beautiful morning up north. I'm Pat Kreitlow. We'll see you come Monday.